It began with silence, the kind that only comes in the late hours of the night when the world is asleep and heaven feels close enough to touch. Saint Faustina knelt in her small cell, weary, unsure, whispering a rosary that seemed to echo into emptiness. For days she had felt nothing, no warmth, no light, no answer. Her prayers felt lost in the air, yet that night something changed. Without warning, her heart trembled, and the room seemed to fill with a light that had no source. She could not move. In that radiant silence, she heard the unmistakable voice of Jesus. He spoke softly, but his words pierced through her soul. "Pray the rosary at this hour, for it is when my heart opens most fully for souls." Faustina didn't understand. Why that time? Why her? The voice carried both command and love, and she knew she was being invited into something far beyond her own understanding. She would soon discover that heaven was about to reveal a secret rhythm, a divine timing hidden within the rosary itself, and what followed that night would change not only her life, but the destiny of countless souls. Before that divine hour was revealed, Saint Faustina endured one of the most painful seasons of her spiritual life. The convent walls, usually filled with quiet devotion, seemed to close in on her. Every prayer felt heavy. Every act of faith seemed to vanish into the void. She had prayed the rosary countless times, morning, noon, night, yet she often felt no response from heaven. In her diary, she confessed that there were moments when even lifting the beads felt like lifting a mountain. Her sisters in the convent saw her as peaceful, but inside she battled silence and darkness. "Why does God hide from me?" she once whispered into the night. The devil mocked her perseverance, whispering doubts that her prayers were useless. Yet even in that dryness, she continued to pray. She offered her emptiness as a sacrifice. What she did not realize was that this spiritual thirst was preparing her heart for an encounter beyond words. Heaven always moves in divine timing. Jesus was not ignoring her prayers. He was teaching her dependence, humility, and obedience. The rosary she prayed in faith, even when she felt nothing, was becoming the very doorway through which heaven would soon speak. The silence before revelation is never wasted. It is the space where God prepares a soul to hear something sacred. And that night, Faustina's silence was about to end. That night, when heaven finally broke its silence, Faustina had no idea that she was about to receive one of the most intimate revelations of her life. The air in her small cell was still, almost expectant. She had just finished her evening prayers when a sudden warmth spread through the room, gentle yet powerful enough to make her tremble. Her eyes lifted instinctively toward the small crucifix on the wall. It was then that she saw him. Jesus stood before her, clothed in radiant light, his eyes filled with both sorrow and love. The familiar rays of mercy, one pale, one red, seemed to flow from his heart, bathing the room in a quiet glow. Faustina fell to her knees, overwhelmed by the presence of her Lord. She dared not speak. Then his voice came, calm but filled with divine authority. "My daughter, there is an hour when the prayers of my faithful pierce heaven most deeply. It is the hour I gave to my mother beneath the cross. Pray the rosary then, for at that time my mercy overflows, and no soul who turns to me is left unaided." Faustina's heart burned as he spoke. She felt the weight of those words, the hour beneath the cross. She knew instantly what he meant, the hour of mercy, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the moment of Christ's death. Jesus was not merely teaching her to pray more. He was revealing heaven's schedule, the sacred time when divine grace is poured out upon the world. As his image faded, Faustina remained motionless, her hands clutching the beads. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Jesus, I trust in you." From that night forward, she would never pray the rosary the same way again. Something sacred had been entrusted to her, a secret rhythm between earth and heaven. The next day, when the clock struck 3, Faustina remembered the Lord's words. Her hands trembled as she reached for her rosary beads, afraid that what she had experienced the night before might have been only a dream. The convent was quiet. Most of the sisters were at work. She knelt by the small wooden bench in her cell, sunlight slanting through the narrow window. The moment she began the first Hail Mary, a stillness unlike anything she had ever known descended upon her. Each bead seemed to glow in her fingers, as if heaven itself was listening. When she reached the sorrowful mysteries, she felt as though time had stopped. The pain of Christ's passion unfolded before her inner eyes, not as imagination, but as living reality. She saw his wounds, heard his final words from the cross, and sensed that every word of her prayer was joining with his suffering. Suddenly, a peace unlike anything on earth filled her soul. It was not merely comfort, it was power, divine presence, alive within her. Faustina later wrote that she felt a river of mercy flowing from his heart at that hour, touching not only her, but countless souls who were far from God. When the rosary ended, she remained in silence. She knew something invisible had happened, as if heaven had opened for those who prayed at that exact time. The burden she had carried for weeks was gone, replaced by an indescribable joy. It was then that Faustina understood. Obedience to divine timing was not a ritual, but an act of trust. She had done nothing extraordinary, yet by simply responding to his call, she had entered into the rhythm of his mercy, and from that moment she resolved to never let 3 o'clock pass without praying, even if only a single decade, for the salvation of souls. Days turned into weeks, and Faustina remained faithful to the call she had received. Every afternoon, as the convent bell approached 3, her heart would stir. No matter what she was doing, working in the kitchen, scrubbing the floors, or serving the sick, she would pause and lift her heart to God. Sometimes she prayed aloud, sometimes silently, but always with that same trembling reverence. Then one afternoon, something remarkable happened. As she prayed the rosary during the hour of mercy, the air around her grew luminous once again. In that light, she saw the face of Jesus, his expression filled with tenderness. But behind him, she also saw souls, countless souls, emerging from a deep shadow, their faces lifted toward heaven. They seemed freed, as if chains had fallen away. Faustina was stunned. "Lord," she whispered, "who are these souls?" And he replied, "They are the ones for whom you have prayed at the hour of my death. Your obedience has drawn them to the fountain of mercy." Tears filled her eyes. She had not expected any reward. Her prayer had been a simple act of faith, yet Jesus was showing her the fruit of obedience, not to glorify her, but to reveal the truth that time itself can become holy when united with his sacrifice. Later, Mary appeared to her in quiet radiance, holding a rosary of light. "My daughter," the Blessed Mother said, "never doubt that when you pray at this hour, I too am beside you. Together we plead for the world that has forgotten love." From that moment, Faustina understood that she was not alone in her prayer. Heaven itself joined her at that sacred time, Jesus, Mary, and the saints interceding with her. What began as a private revelation had become a shared mission, to teach souls the power of praying the rosary at the very hour when mercy triumphs over justice. And as she continued this practice, the signs multiplied, sinners converted, peace restored, burdens lifted, all as if heaven itself had bent closer to earth at that hour. As Faustina pondered all that had happened, she began to ask herself why Jesus had chosen that particular time, the very hour he died. The answer unfolded slowly within her soul, like light filling a darkened room. In her prayer, she felt the Lord speak again, not through thunder or visions, but through a gentle understanding that pierced her heart. The hour of his death, he revealed, was not merely a historical moment. It was the eternal pulse of mercy itself. At 3 o'clock, the world had fallen silent as the Son of God breathed his last, and from his open side flowed blood and water, the symbols of forgiveness and new life. It was at that hour that heaven's justice was satisfied and divine mercy triumphed. The world would never be the same. Faustina realized that when the Rosary is prayed at that time, the soul is not merely remembering Christ's passion, it is entering into it. Each Hail Mary becomes a drop of compassion, each mystery a step closer to the cross. The beads, simple and familiar, become like bridges between the living and the dead, the sinner and the Savior. She wrote in her diary that Jesus' heart was still open at that hour, ready to receive all who would turn to him. The Rosary, prayed in faith, was like a key unlocking that heart again and again for the sake of souls. And though he asked Faustina to pray especially at 3, the message was clear. Every act of prayer united with that hour carries infinite grace. In this, Faustina discovered the secret rhythm of heaven, that mercy flows strongest not through eloquent words or grand gestures, but through trustful prayer offered at the time when love himself gave everything. From then on, she saw the clock not as a measure of hours, but as a reminder of eternity, and 3 o'clock as the meeting point between divine mercy and human need. Faustina's revelation was not meant for her alone. In the quiet of her convent life, she began to understand that the message Jesus gave her was for the whole world, for every weary heart searching for peace, for every soul burdened by guilt, for every believer who feels their prayers go unheard. The Rosary, prayed at the hour of his mercy, was not only a devotion, it was an invitation. She wrote that the Lord's heart longs for souls to trust in his mercy, and that no prayer made at that time is wasted. The moment the clock strikes 3, she urged, pause, even if only for a brief instant, and remember the moment when Christ died for love. For in that remembrance, heaven listens more closely, and grace flows more freely. Faustina taught that this act need not be grand or perfect. Even a whisper of the Rosary, said with love, joins the prayer of Mary herself. When we pray the Rosary at that hour, we join a chorus stretching across time, from Calvary to every corner of the earth. The suffering, the lonely, the forgotten, all become part of one great offering of mercy. In today's restless world where noise and distraction drown out the voice of God, Faustina's message feels almost prophetic. Jesus does not ask us for endless words, but for one moment of sincere union with him, especially at the hour when his mercy is widest open. Whether you are at work, at home, or on the road, that simple act of prayer connects your heart to his. And perhaps that is what moved Faustina most deeply, that the infinite mercy of God could meet the frailty of human life in such an ordinary moment. 3 o'clock is not just a time, it is a doorway. Through it, souls can enter the mystery of divine compassion, just as she did, and discover that heaven is never far away. Yet as Faustina continued to pray at the hour of mercy, she began to see something even more profound, a secret that most souls overlook. It wasn't only that Jesus had chosen 3 o'clock as sacred, it was that time itself could become sanctified when united to the cross. She wrote that every moment of the day could hold grace if it was offered through love, but at 3 o'clock, that grace multiplied, as though heaven's gates were flung wide open. In one of her visions, she saw the world covered in darkness, while rays of light burst forth from Christ's heart at that sacred hour. These rays touched cities, families, hospitals, prisons, and battlefields, places she had never seen, yet she felt their cries. Souls who had been lost suddenly turned toward God. Some were on the brink of death, others burdened by sin. But all were reached by mercy through the prayers of those who remembered the Passion at that time. She realized the Rosary was more than repetition. It was participation. Each decade, especially when prayed at 3, was like throwing a lifeline into the depths of human despair. Heaven used those beads to draw back souls drowning in sin. The rhythm of the prayers echoed the beating of Christ's own heart, steady, patient, unending. And yet, Faustina also saw the danger that people would forget this sacred rhythm, treating the Rosary as routine rather than relationship. Jesus warned her gently, "Many pray with lips but not with hearts. Teach them to enter into my agony, then their prayers will move heaven." It was a warning and a promise. The Rosary's timing was not a superstition, but a covenant, a reminder that when we join our suffering, our worries, our pain to His, at the hour He died, our prayer gains eternal weight. In that union, even the smallest soul can help save the greatest sinner. Faustina wept as she realized this truth. Every person who lifts the Rosary at that hour, no matter how weak or unworthy, becomes a vessel of mercy for the world. The forgotten secret was not only about the time, but about the heart behind it, a heart united with the crucified one. In the days that followed, Faustina's life became a living testimony to the power of that hour. The more she prayed the Rosary at 3, the more she felt heaven's rhythm pulsing through her day. Her burdens grew lighter, her compassion deeper, and even her smallest actions became offerings of love. She wrote, "When the clock strikes 3, my soul is seized with longing for the crucified. I enter into his agony, and through prayer I pour mercy upon the whole world." And that is the promise hidden in this mystery, that whoever unites their prayer to Christ's death at that hour will never pray alone. The angels, the saints, and the Mother of God herself join them in intercession. Time bends. Heaven touches earth. The simple beads of the Rosary become a channel of infinite grace, carrying our pleas into the very heart that was pierced for us. For you, this invitation still stands. Each day when 3 o'clock arrives, heaven waits. Whether you are able to pray the full Rosary or only 1 decade, pause, remember His sacrifice, whisper a prayer for mercy, and offer your heart in trust. That act, done with love, reaches further than you can imagine. The world hungers for peace, families ache for healing, and countless souls wander in darkness. But Jesus has already given the key through Faustina's obedience. Pray the Rosary at the hour of mercy. It is there that mercy flows without measure, not because the prayer is perfect, but because His love is. So when that sacred hour comes, let the world fade. Take up your Rosary, look toward the cross, and join Saint Faustina in her simple yet powerful act of trust. You may not see the miracles that follow, but heaven will. And one day you will learn what Faustina already knew, that no prayer offered at that hour is ever forgotten, and no soul who turns to Him is ever lost.